Hi everyone, Dr. Liz here. Welcome to the Hypnotize Me podcast. I'm glad you're here and hopefully it will help you with your journey along the way. I've been an entrepreneur for most of my adult life. I built an award-winning company that was a household name in South Florida, then sold it, and then focused mainly on my private practice as a psychotherapist, helping people feel better. I specialize in hypnosis techniques for anxiety, sleep, emotional healing, some habit change. All of my experience gives you a unique perspective. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Dr. Liz Bonet, Bonet. Another way is to buy one of the downloads that I have for sale on my website, drlizhypnosis.com, DRLIZ hypnosis.com. I only have a couple up there, but they're really good ones. They've stood the test of time. And if you're looking for some free downloads, subscribe to the newsletter and you'll get free hypnosis downloads to reduce anxiety and to increase emotional stability. You can listen to those immediately. Start helping yourself today. But listen to this episode first before you do that. Another way to support the podcast is to rate and review it on iTunes or Spotify or wherever it is you're listening to it. That always helps me get found by people, which helps me help more people. So you're going to help me help more people. I'm going to wrap this up. Enjoy the episode, and I hope to see you back here soon. All right, everyone. Dr. Liz here. Our guest today is Kayce Gehret. And you will notice that my voice is a little off because I have a cold, but I did not want to reschedule because you would be quite surprised how difficult it is sometimes to schedule these podcast interviews, considering time zones and work schedules and holidays and all kinds of stuff. So just a heads up on that. But she is here to talk to us about microdosing, which is pretty popular these days. Yeah, so we're just going to jump in with some questions here. So, Kayce, how did you get into microdosing? Like, what's the first time you heard about it?
It was very serendipitously and unexpectedly. So I grew up wanting to be a doctor. I was on a very traditional Western path. And when I was 19, I had a very strong intuition to move across the country to California. And there I fell into quote unquote alternative medicine and went into a very different path, studied energy work, body work, hypnotherapy, developed a practice, but I was curious about psychedelics and earth medicines and had read about them, especially for spiritual development. But I had a grand mal seizure disorder. So I was very hesitant. I never did any drugs growing up at all because I was very hesitant to destabilize my already kind of unstable mind.
I'm sure your parents were like, never do drugs. Never do drugs.
Plus, I was like the heart of Gen X. And so we grew up kind of steeped in just say no and, lots of the fear tropes around drugs. And so I had really not been open to it, particularly around psychedelics. Until much later. And I met someone who introduced me to the concept of microdosing mushrooms. And I was like, okay, it's sub-threshold. I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm not going to lose control. It's all natural working with organic mushrooms. And I didn't really have any expectations. And at the time, there wasn't much information out there. I didn't know anybody else who was doing it. So I just kind of went in thinking it would deepen my meditation practice, maybe, or like heighten my creativity, maybe. And my seizures stopped and they never returned. So that was in and of itself pretty remarkable. But I also received a whole host of other benefits, cognitive development, uplift, sharpening of my senses, nature connection, deepening intuition.
Like, how long have they been gone?
My seizures, since, losing track of time. So before the pandemic, everything's like before the pandemic or after the pandemic. But it was, I think 2019 that would have been.
Okay, so most of your life you lived with this disorder, the seizures.
Yes. Okay. I was medicated. I started being medicated when I was 19, and even though they could never find a biological source of my seizures, I was tested for all the things. I think seeing how other people have healed, I've had 12 other people work with microdosing and heal seizures, either completely or dramatically.
Uh-huh.
And what I've come to understand about my own healing from them is I think mine, one, I have a very, very sensitive nervous system. I'm a
Hmm.
human design mental projector. I'm like as open as it gets. So I'm
Hmm.
just kind of a sponge for all energies. Second, I lost my father very suddenly at 7.
Mm,
And that was very traumatic. And I remember the year after that happened, I spent most of the year in the nurse's office with headaches.
of course. Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
this first sign that grief just meant grief lodged in my body as headaches in my nervous
Hmm.
system. And then when I was 18, I developed a really bad case of Epstein-Barr virus.
Oh,
And I was in a coma for 2 weeks, unconscious most
wow.
of the time. I eventually came out of that, but I think I had, between those things, I think I had really damaged my nervous system because
Uh-huh.
of the virus, because of grief. And that's what really healed with mushrooms. That's why all of the
Okay.
medications didn't really, I think they lessened the seizures, but they never really healed them completely
Uh-huh.
because there was never anything wrong with me. It was just a highly sensitive nervous system that had kind of taken a beating.
Okay, got
Uh,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that would fall under central sensitization then. Was that ever tossed around for you? It probably didn't even exist back then. But
No, I mean, so much didn't exist back then. It wasn't until I started reading, like some other famous people would just have spells that I eventually
Mhm.
I would read
Yeah.
about, and I was like, I think that's what I have because it never really tracked. Although they diagnosed me with epilepsy, that
Hmm.
never really felt aligned for me,
Okay.
and I failed all of the Western tests for epilepsy.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
but nonetheless, I think, I don't know, I think there was such a lack of curiosity. And I remember in
Mm,
all of my doctors and professionals at the time being very much not open whatsoever to anything, any causes outside of, a physical
okay.
disorder.
Okay. So then how long did it take you to realize like, oh my God, they've gone away?
A
A
few
few
months,
months.
because
Okay.
even when I didn't have a seizure, I would have auras and
Uh-huh.
different sensations that I never really worried about. Well, I've had them in interesting places, but I always have a little bit of a precursor and
Hmm.
clue, um, little signs that they were coming on in advance. And I just noticed I hadn't had those for a long time. And so
Oh.
after a few months, and then I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder how long this will keep up, you know, and then
Yeah.
wondering. And then when I took a break from microdosing, I was also curious. This happens a lot in practice when people have healing happen. Then they're like, am I going to relapse once I stop microdosing mushrooms? And
Yeah.
then when you stop it, they've never come back. And so it's so different
Mm,
than, say, a pharmaceutical experience that you're relying on the substance to have
yes.
the mechanism. This is actually root cause healing that you get to keep.
Okay, interesting. So you took a break from him. Okay, so when you're saying microdosing, you're taking a little bit every day.
Yes. And so
Okay.
we typically work with a protocol to start out with, just because most humans, our human minds really, it's helpful to have like some kind of scaffolding to
Uh-huh.
start practice of any kind. It's kind of like when you're starting yoga, you're starting meditation or new diet. It's like if you have a little bit of containment at the
Hmm.
front end, ultimately you don't need to meditate every single day after
Hmm.
you've meditated every day for the first 6 months, right? You can kind of
Hmm.
tap into that state. Same concept with microdosing. When people are starting out for the first 3 months, we'll start with the protocol that's individual to each person. Some people like to dose every other day. Some people like to dose 4 days a week. Some people like to dose one day on, 2 days off. We
Hmm.
sit with people and kind of help them determine based on what's going on with them, what are their intentions and hopes for practice, and
Hmm.
we'll create a protocol for them. Typically, we'll take a break after about 3 months at the most. Some people have a
Hmm.
lot of movement and growth and healing just in 6 weeks, and they take a break after 6 weeks for a couple weeks. But I'd say the average is about 3 months that people practice for.
Okay, and then they take a break for a little bit. And then
Mhm.
how long is that break?
It varies with each person. There's no set, hard, fast rules. When we get together with the clinicians and the scientists in the space, they recommend, just based on overall harm reduction, like doing anything chronically consistently is typically where the problem lies. And so they recommend right now, kind of best current practices is after 3 months of practice, take half time off. So most people will take like a month or 6 weeks off of practice before resuming.
So when you took your first break, let's say, right,
Mm-hmm.
then, and you realize, oh my God, they're not coming back. The seizures are not coming back. And then, like, could that be forever? Like, okay, I just microdosed for 3 months and that's it? Or is it typically like you need some kind of maintenance protocol, let's say?
I think it's a great question. I think if I had just stopped and never microdosed again, still believe I probably wouldn't have seizures today.
Mm.
Because I continue to practice on and off, I think I really, really know that it's highly unlikely. I haven't had even an aura or tinge of them over time. And I think most people, it's interesting. I think most people, especially people who have profound healing, when they come back to practice, it's less about treating and healing what they've already solved for, and
Mhm.
more about a deepening trust in the medicine and a curiosity of what else is possible. So we have a lot
Mhm.
of people who maybe they started because they had migraines, or they
Mhm.
wanted to drink less alcohol, or move off
Mhm.
cannabis, or they had
Mhm.
a looping mind, like an obsessive mind that they wanted
Yeah.
to let go of. Once those things heal and people metabolize those things, when they come back to practice, they typically want to work on something else.
Okay, got it. All right. So the goals um change. It sounds like some of them are practical and some of them are more spiritual.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I had a friend's daughter who had tried to get off marijuana many, many times. And finally it was microdosing that helped her do it.
Excellent.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk some about the legalities of it. I'm sure it varies by state in the US and it probably varies by country. Yes. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. At some point, it's funny, like 5 years ago, we were trying to kind of keep up with it, where it was, and it just became it's so people driven at this point,
Mhm.
and versus like government top down movement and dictating how it goes is very, very much people powered. They just released a study a couple weeks ago. Rand Corporation put out an enormous study, probably the biggest one yet, that over 10 million people microdosed in the US in 2025. And
Really?
so that just shows that like this is so people powered, and people hear it from other people. People
Yeah.
empower themselves to try it on their own and then share it with others versus kind of waiting for the science, the research, the government to
Uh-huh.
approve and legislate it. So right now we're still in this like weird in between. It's
Uh-huh.
very hard to undo laws, even when we know they were not founded in reality to begin with. And
Yeah.
so, unfortunately, psilocybin is still on Schedule 1 in most of the United States.
Mhm.
Oregon, Colorado have decriminalized and legalized. There, Alaska, New Mexico, New Jersey are getting close, if not past. So it's happening in this very organic mycelial way. There's towns and cities and counties across the US have decided to decriminalize within their town and city zone limits. So it's all different all over the United States. When people are practicing, really the most important thing is that you feel safe personally.
Uh-huh.
So if you live in a place where it's very accepted, like it's not legal in California, but at the same
Mhm.
time, you can pretty much talk about it freely. You can talk to the
Yeah.
person in the grocery
Yeah.
store about it, and most people are open to trying it. We have a lot of people in our community who live in other places, though, where they can't talk about it freely
Mhm.
without
Mhm.
judgment or stigma. And so it's nice to have guide and community and microdosing family to kind of come
Uh-huh.
together so that you can feel on the same wavelength with you, have kindred spirits, also have your questions answered and be able to talk about your experience freely.
So is it important to have like an in-person relationship with a guide if you're microdosing versus a virtual? I mean, I don't know. Like walk me through that first time because I'm thinking about like doing LSD in my like when I was in college or something, or mushrooms where it's like you never did it alone because it is social. But these days, it's sort of like, yeah, people do all kinds of stuff alone and have a bad trip, let's say, and then it's like, oh, why'd you do that alone? So it's like, how is
Mhm.
this working for
I
a
think
practical sense? Is that an important safety measure? Like, talk to me about that.
yes, great question. So a lot of people, the older generations of the planet are associate psychedelics with the high dose
Yeah.
experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Like we start with the big stuff, and then now we're
Mm-hmm.
considering the smaller dosing.
Yeah.
Whereas people who don't have an awareness of kind of the 50s and the 60s and went on then, um, it's actually, I think, beneficial to start small and
Mm-hmm.
develop a relationship, develop a faith and a trust in the medicine, know how it feels in your system, and then work your way up to a higher dose experience. So I'm hoping,
Okay,
like the
got
way
it.
we hold practice, microdosing is sub-perceptual, sub-threshold. So you're not altered. That's the beauty of it. It's so subtle and it's so incremental that you just go about your daily life. It's something you do on your own. It's more like I tell
Okay.
people, it's like a spiritual supplement, right?
Okay. All
Is
right.
you're doing on your own. And that way it's a little bit easier to integrate into your day-to-day life. It's kind of similar to kind of having a daily meditation practice where you're meditating for 15, 20 minutes a day
Mm-hmm.
versus like going away, leaving your home to do a 10-day meditation retreat.
Okay, got it.
That would
Got it.
be the equivalent of a high dose ceremony that
Yeah.
you wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily want to do on your own. So when people microdose, it's on their own.
Yeah.
Hmm.
People do that. Like they do go, and I mean, I have multiple friends. I can,
Hmm.
I'm not gonna say their names, but like where it's like, yeah, they go in nature. Uh, the two that I'm thinking about are in California, right? It's like
Of
he doesn't
course.
live there, but he goes to California to have that, I guess what you're describing, more of a high dose spiritual experience where they
Yes.
really feel like they're communing with nature or spirituality or the spiritual guides, that type of thing. So it's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about a daily supplement. Like I feel much better when I take turmeric. My joints feel better, So it's not like, oh, I need someone standing here beside me while I take turmeric to see how I react to that.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And the purpose of when you have like a community and a guide, whether it's one-to-one or a group experience, the beauty of having that is microdosing can be so subtle that you can
Mhm.
kind of miss a lot of what you're experiencing if you don't have that ability to reflect.
Okay.
Especially, I love working with groups. It's my favorite way to bring in microdosing is kind of small, intimate groups of like 8 to 12 people because every single call people will start out and go, I guess I feel, I'm a little bit more motivated. I'm getting more done. Nothing major. And then the next person will share, and the next person will share, and then they'll go, "Oh, wait a minute.
Uh-huh.
Wait a minute. I forgot this." Like things that other people share will trigger and go, "Oh, actually,
Mhm.
this, someone cut me off." And I was like, wow, I responded to that way differently than I would have. So I think having the reflection,
Like
right?
being from like, we were talking beforehand for the listeners about I I used to live in South Florida, which has crazy drivers. I just came back from there actually for about a week there. Um, and it was
Yes.
like so stressful. At one point, this was years and years ago, my daughter was smaller. She's in elementary school, and she said, "Mommy, you better stop yelling or you're gonna get in an accident." It's like, oh my God, it's so hard not to yell at other drivers. I'm sure people have that experience in all kinds of places, but that's a great example. Like meditation got me there closer, let's say, right? But not quite
Microdosing for
100%.
I-95. Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
And Kayce lives in Florida right now. We both do. So, yeah,
I
sometimes it's like not so drivers. And we get all kinds of tourists. So people are coming from all different countries, even and locations, and they don't know where they're going. So the drivers are not like the best, let's say. So, okay, that's a great example. They're like, hey, I'm handling the drivers on the road better. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And practice is really like a great spectrum. So microdosing tends to be like we work with 50 milligram up to 200. 250 milligrams is like a microdosing range with mushrooms. When you move beyond 250, that's more like mini dosing and moderate dosing. So each person will have their own unique threshold where you're not in a trip, you're not in a journey, but you'll start to feel a little bit altered. Your senses will dial up, things will be a little bit brighter, more intense. More uplifted and it's much more noticeable.
Mm,
Typically like a higher dose journey where you're leaving the earth realm and moving into mystical realms and mystical states. That's when, especially for your first few times journeying, it's nice to have a trained, experienced guide or trip sitter with you to
got it.
support that experience because you are like leaving the muggle world realm.
Uh-huh. It's so cute. The Muggle world for sure. All right, got it. Got it. So generally when you're running these groups, I'm assuming online,
Mhm,
like the 8 to
mhm.
12 or so. Okay. And so generally you're starting really low and then someone finds the dose that works best for them, let's say. And then they have the option to, not necessarily with you, with someone, to have more of like spiritual experiences if they want to do
Mhm.
that from time to time,
Yes.
but that's not what they're walking around with.
Yes, it's
Okay.
really like to lay a foundation of practice. And so I think we've just gotten away from the way we used to hold practice, which is more of like a dieta and preparation for the high dose ceremony. Like I
Mm,
love studying like ancient practice, indigenous practice, the way the medicines, because we've worked with earth medicines for millennia, right?
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And now we
Mhm.
kind of frame everything in a pharmaceutical lens, but the way we used to practice, for example, in Greece, for over 2,000 years, they held the Eleusinian mysteries that were highly likely a psychedelic sacrament that happened once a year. And they happened in September, but people actually began the experience in February. And they called them the lesser mysteries, began in February. And this was a period of time of preparation, purification, cleansing, kind of getting the body, mind, spirit ready for the ultimate experience. And I think like I would love to see practice kind of oriented that way, where people don't just go straight to the high dose journey. You have a period of time prepping your body, mind, spirit in all ways so that you already have a deep connection with the medicine before you're kind of taken into the big experience of your lifetime.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, we do tend to, I think, do it backwards, at least in the Western world these days.
We do a lot of things backwards right now.
That is true. Yes, yes. So tell people like, let's say someone really is interested in this, but they have no idea how to find this, contact someone, anything like that. How would they do that?
That's most people I work with.
Yeah.
So just know that, like, that's most people. I
Yeah.
work with a lot of people who, like, a couple years ago, if you told them they would be working with psychedelic magic mushrooms, they would have been like, "You're joking. You're
Mhm.
joking." So just know it's like, it's literally people from all over the world, from all walks of life, backgrounds, and ages. And I find mushrooms really call people. So
Mm.
it's typically not something you have to be convinced to do. It's like once they kind of capture your attention and start calling you, it's like you see it everywhere. You hear it everywhere. And that's
Mhm.
like your not subtle sign that to kind of step into practice. And so just that initial curiosity is enough to open the door. So a lot of our practice was structured around meeting people at these access points when they come in. So we started with
Mm.
group programs so that they could have a small, intimate container, very personal, very supportive for 6 weeks. Then people wanted to stick together. So we created a community that's like a lighter touch, more expansive, larger group so that we come together a couple times a month and people can step into that anytime. It's very accessible. It's just like a monthly membership where you can step
Mhm.
in, ask questions, talk to real people, save yourself the internet rabbit hole
Yeah.
searches and
Right. Yeah.
all the misinformation out there. And you can just kind of step in and get real people, real humans, real experience, get your questions answered. And then for people, a lot of people were coming to practice and having such remarkable personal experiences. They were like, I think I want to support other people
Mhm.
in my profession. I want to add this to my healing practice, to my clinical practice. So we developed a professional training program to train other people to do this professionally from a supportive guideship capacity.
Yeah, I did see that on your website, the facilitator. training. Yeah.
Yes, we just started it last year. We're in our third cohort now. We've had, how many people have we had? 60 some people, I
Wow,
think, as
that's a
of
good
now.
number. Yeah.
And it's been remarkable. It's been such a beautiful experience. And one thing that I've been stunned at, like the diversity of background of
Really?
people. Like I knew we would have a lot of psychotherapists. I knew we would have a lot of counselors and coaches, but it's been so incredibly diverse, from astrologers to other healing artists to people in corporate, people who
Hmm.
are retired, people who just want to serve their communities,
Hmm.
and start women's circles or start men's groups and support different niches. People want to support people in recovery, people who want to support women in perimenopause.
Hmm.
So it's
Oh, is
really
it good for
organic.
perimenopause? I'm very
Yeah.
interested in it. Is. Will it
Yes.
stop hot flashes
Yeah.
and the
Yes.
4:30 a.m. awakenings?
Uh,
You're like,
no,
no,
unfortunately,
it's time to commune with your spiritual guides. That's
yes,
what I do.
exactly. Exactly. No, we work with a lot of people in our community, our perimenopause, menopause, and so we do have a lot of people practicing for those things. There's certain things only estrogen can do,
Yes.
unfortunately, but there's a lot of things
Yeah.
the mushroom can do.
Mhm.
So I am so grateful. I think I'm so excited to see hormone replacement therapy
Mhm.
coming back into having a renaissance after being
Yes.
stigmatized for so long. At the same time, so exciting to see earth medicines coming back to
Yeah.
us after being
Yeah.
stigmatized for so long. There's a lot of
Yes.
parallels, because for the same reason, it's like they're very disruptive. Like if we have suddenly, if all women over 50 are empowered
Yeah.
to be whole and complete and vibrant and thriving in all ways, it's very disruptive
Yes.
to a
Yeah.
lot of
Well,
industries.
good way to put it, I would say. Yeah, very empowering to feel like you're yourself, let's say. That you have the energy and the time and the mental energy and emotional energy to accomplish some things, to stand up and speak about some things. Yes, got it.
100%.
And how do you see it used in recovery?
Oh, so beautifully. So we have seen such a shift in, I started noticing this shift first, honestly, with people in recovery, but then more complete across the population, where on people's intakes forms and first calls, it became less about being sober,
Hmm.
just like I don't drink. And that's the goal, to a greater goal of that's not no longer good enough. Like I actually want to thrive. I want to feel
Hmm.
great. I want to feel joyful. And there's a big difference between being sober
Hmm.
and truly loving life and thriving in your life. And so many people that I met, especially coaches and guides who work with this niche, who are sober and move through recovery, addiction and recovery themselves, they hit that point where they were long time sober.
Hmm.
They just, it wasn't enough. Like they still were not mentally healthy, well,
Hmm.
well and thriving. And so they were led to work with psychedelics to find that, and they
Hmm.
received that and so much more. And so I have some colleagues that specifically work with people in
Okay, so
recovery, but I think it's this collective momentum right now of moving away from just making conditions and symptoms manageable
mhm,
and good enough, and really moving into true lasting healing,
mhm.
um, in a collective way.
Okay. So more like instead of just maintenance, like we were saying before, thriving, like feeling
Hmm.
really good about your life and the progress. I often will work with people in recovery and they'll say like, where are the promises? Like the promises have not come true for me. And it's been like 10 years they've been in recovery, because the 12 step, almost every meeting ends with the promises that your life will thrive, right? Like you'll have a spiritual awakening right there in the promises. And they're like, it's not happening for me. So even though they've been going to meetings for a long time and, really working their steps and all that good stuff. So that's really interesting. So it's sort of like a subspecialty within the microdosing world, is what I'm hearing, though.
It is at this point,
Okay.
yes. I mean, it's remarkable. This current cohort we have in our facilitator training, well over half of the people in there are sober, and
Uh-huh.
they're really drawn to work in that specific area to support people, which is really remarkable, that just the sheer number of people coming for that purpose. But I think too, one of the big misconceptions about earth medicines is I think a lot of people, especially people who are in recovery, are fearful of the stigma of it because they think it's like a drug. They equate it as a
Yeah.
drug
Uh-huh.
or
Yeah.
an intoxicating substance, and they think they don't have permission to work with earth medicines because they're sober. That a sober person, they're disqualified from working with psychedelics because
Uh-huh.
of that reason. And actually, there's such a different experience.
Mm-hmm.
Alcohol and most addictive drugs take you further away from yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Mushrooms bring you home to yourself, sometimes with uncomfortable honesty. So
Okay.
that becomes the more important piece when working with people on mushrooms, is to really get down to those layers underneath. Like, what are those things that underlie the addiction in the first place? Which a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times when you just stop drinking and you kind of will yourself to stop drinking, you still aren't addressing those underlying trauma and
Yes.
disconnection from self. And so psilocybin mushrooms are masters at bringing people home to themselves, reconnecting you to yourself, reconnecting you to the earth, to your life, to others.
Mm-hmm.
And alcohol does the opposite. And so it's such a misconception when people kind of categorize them together, because they actually couldn't be energy wise, resonance wise, frequency wise, they could not be more opposite.
Okay, got it. Got it. Well, I would imagine, I don't know what to call it, like some sponsors or home groups or something, or communities, recovery communities, let's say, that are very hardcore, like no antidepressants, no painkillers, even if you're having surgery, like, all kinds of stuff, even if someone's never had a problem with them before. And so I would imagine that that's not a fit for everybody, certainly. And two, it would depend on someone's influences about versus like, yeah, okay, maybe perhaps you do need an antidepressant because you're bipolar, and well, antidepressants aren't for bipolar, but you know what I'm saying, like perhaps you need medication because you're bipolar and that's why you were drinking in the first place, like, like there's some other influences there where it's like, all right, some antidepressants, antipsychotics, like this type of class of medication, mental health medications, let's say, are okay to help regulate. And this would be an option to that. Do you find that people use it on top of sometimes
Mhm.
antidepressants, or they don't want to be on antidepressants because they all have some side effects? They almost universally are difficult to get off of if someone wants to come off of them. And so sometimes people don't want to be on them. I went through a depression last year, pretty severe. And it got to the point where I called a psychiatrist and I'm like, okay, I think it's time. And she actually talked me out of them. And she recommended some supplements for me to explore, because she's like, no, you're just going to feel numb. You need your feelings right now to make some decisions about your life. And the withdrawals are awful. I had never been on one before, even though I'm not opposed to them at all. I think they're very helpful. They've been helpful for my kids. But she talked me out of it. So I could see how like this might be a alternative for someone who really doesn't want to go through all of that.
100%. First of all, bravo to your psychiatrist.
Yeah, yeah,
You have a good
right.
one. You
Yeah.
have a good one in her.
Yeah, and she said like antidepressants, they're only effective, period, for about 30% of
Mhm.
people, period. And so she's like, you could fall into that 30%, but statistically, that's not likely. Like, and she's saying, so there's this slow ramp up and they may do nothing for you. She's unusual, a psychiatrist. She's sort of antidepressant, but
Yes, yes. Thankfully, it's really shifting. I've noticed in the last 5, 6 years, like when we were first starting out, there were not a lot of doctors, psychotherapists, clinicians coming to practice. And then
uh,
like 2 years in, I started noticing they were kind of casing it out, right? They were following,
Yeah.
but not yet participating. Then all of a sudden in 2023, things shifted and all of a sudden they started coming to practice.
Mm.
And when I asked them what shifted,
Uh-huh.
they said, one, we really need the support because we are on all the antidepressants and they're not working
Ah.
for us. They don't work for us. And
Interesting. Right?
this is all we're equipped to do for people is to prescribe things and they're not working for anyone. Also, they wanted support for themselves to experience what it was like to work with medicines themselves so that they could know, even though they couldn't prescribe a psychedelic work in their practice, they wanted to at least understand how it works so they would know which of their clients it would be appropriate for so that they could recommend it and be open and informed and educated around it. So we have a lot of psychotherapists and doctors who've been through our programs who don't utilize it in their professional practice, but when a client comes to them and says, I would like to microdose on my own, are you aware of this and familiar? They can say
They
yes
wouldn't say yes.
and be supportive to it. And so now it's really shifted in such an exciting way with more and more doctors and psychiatrists open to it and really vulnerably sharing like, hey, we got hormone therapy wrong for the last 25 years. Hey, we've really got mushrooms wrong for the last 50 years.
Right.
There's way more to this than we were taught and conditioned to believe. So it's really changing. One of the great misconceptions out there now is thinking that mushroom practice is apples to apples similar to your antidepressant, right? Like if I'm taking this, it's going to be a similar experience to taking that. It's very opposite, very opposite. So again, similar to alcohol, antidepressants are numbing, they are escaping, they are not touching the original trauma or dysregulation. So right now, like there's tons of women going through perimenopause and menopause that are being prescribed antidepressants when really what they need is estrogen and mushrooms.
For
right?
Sure. Yes.
And doctors aren't recognizing that as for what it is yet. That is changing, thankfully. But it's recognizing that if you're never dealing with the underlying, what's causing the depression, you're not healing and you're just kind of kicking. Antidepressants are often kicking the can down the road.
Yes.
And when they were originally intended and tested for brief, momentary interventions. So SSRIs were only ever researched for use for 6 months or less. How many people go in and are given an SSRI with a plan to come off of them in 6 months?
Yeah.
No one.
I know.
No one.
Yeah. I can think of one person. That's it.
Yeah. And then when they choose to come off, when the person speaks up and says they would like to come off, they're met with resistance often. And you have a mental illness. And if you come off, but then what happens is when they go off, they have these horrendous withdrawal side effects. And the doctors often tell them that's proof that they needed them.
Oh, I haven't heard that one. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's really not, and also too, there's so many other side effects. Like you hear about the ramping on, the ramping off withdrawal side effects, but there's longer term things with antidepressants that are blunting to our instincts, our empathy, our intuition. We don't have all of our humanness and our humanity and our full range and spectrum of emotions. And so I've worked with a lot of people who were on antidepressants for many years, tapered off with the support of mushrooms. And the way they describe it is so beautifully. It's all different ways, but in various ways they say like it's life just had a very low ceiling for the longest time. Like I didn't fall through the floor, but I was kind of kept in this narrow range of emotion. And now that I'm free of them, it's like the ceiling is off my house for the first time in 20 years. And I can see the sky and I can feel joy again. And I can feel uplift and optimism about life in a way that I didn't have access to before.
Wow. Pretty dramatic. So, in that same vein, do some people use microdosing to come off the antidepressant so that withdrawal isn't so bad?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Very
absolutely.
interesting.
We have, in almost every group we've ever done, we have usually a half people that maybe not, they're open to tapering, but they want to see how they feel, is usually how people come in, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Lots of times people come in and they think that they have to taper before they can work with mushrooms. There's like that out there. That is not true at all. That's not true at all. And people, we typically say, if you think you might want to taper, typically start working with mushrooms, get connected to the medicine. And when you're feeling good and consistent and uplifted, that's a good time to start working with a pharmacologist or your prescriber to develop a tapering plan. And
Mhm.
for people who live in places where they don't feel like their prescriber might be supportive to them tapering, we have some pharmacists who are classically trained Western pharmacists who also are psychedelically informed
Mhm.
that develop tapering plans for people in our programs.
Oh, very interesting. I love it. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Often people come to me and want to get off sleep medications. I'm a sleep specialist. And legally, I can't say this is how you get off a sleep medication. Like you have to talk to your provider legally, really. And some of the providers give them no plan at all. Zero, no plan. And it's like, okay, you need to ask them for a very detailed plan, like how much do I cut for how many weeks or months or whatever it is. All right, so talk to me about sleep. I know we're coming near the end of our time together, but talk to me about microdosing and sleep.
I'm happy to. I
Okay.
love this I love this subject so much, and it's so life-changing for people. So when I started to do this work, I was floored by how many people over 40, particularly men over 40, that medicate themselves to sleep every single night.
Oh yeah, a huge percent. Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe it.
Yes.
And what I came to realize is, a lot more women on their applications would say, I have anxiety. I
Mm.
have chronic
Mhm.
anxiety and it manifests in all different ways during my waking hours. And I realized men have anxiety too. It just manifests in their sleep.
Ah,
Because for a lot of different reasons and societal conditioning, is men are really feel like they need to keep it together during
mhm.
the day, and they box it in and have a capacity to kind of put on the brave front and I got it together, but then they can't sleep at night and they can't sleep at night and they can't sleep at night. And so
Mm.
eventually they turns to Ambien and Trazodone and all the
Yeah.
others. And before they know it, they've been on those prescriptions for 12, 15, 18 years.
Yeah.
And talk about side effects. Yeah, so
Yes.
many side effects, so much like blunting of feelings, of empathy, of intuition, connection to self,
Well, also the
sensitivity.
like irritability, sometimes they feel a hangover in the morning, cognitive effects, like short-term memory that it affects, and there is a higher risk for early dementia with
Yes.
with the sleep, some of the sleep medications, not all of them. They have some newer ones that don't necessarily have that effect, although the newer ones don't have 20 years of research behind them either, do they? Like, who knows? But the older ones, absolutely. Ambien, absolutely. There's a higher risk for dementia. It's a very clear relationship. Yeah. So,
Yes, sleep is so fundamental to our healing. I mean, we are healing so much. Our bodies are trained to metabolize
yes.
and heal in our sleep. And so if we are not getting natural, deep, restful, enough
Yes.
sleep, and so many people, especially men, are either medicated sleep or underslept,
Uh-huh.
and you really need, especially our brains,
Yeah.
need that time
Yes.
to marinate and just be at peace and rest overnight. And so I do think a lot of the conditions, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, a lot of the neurological
Mhm.
conditions we see in elder age have to do with both of those factors. So
Yes.
microdosing can be so life-changing for people around sleep.
Mhm.
Interestingly, typically the first medicine we introduce is Amanita muscaria. It's actually not psilocybin. So
Uh-huh.
Amanita is the red mushroom with the white dots, kind of the
Okay.
Alice in Wonderland mushroom or
Uh-huh.
the Christmas mushroom that you see
Got it.
everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very different, whereas psilocybin works on the serotonin receptors,
Mhm.
Amanita works on the GABA system.
Okay.
And so people, especially when people are coming off of benzodiazepines or sleeping
Mhm.
medications, Amanita can be really, really beautifully supportive in helping that tapering process, helping people with some of the withdrawal symptoms from those things. And
Mhm.
Amanita is really promoting a beautiful, deep, restorative sleep and oftentimes it brings people, not only people to have really restful sleep for the first time in years, their dream life comes back online.
Ah,
And their connection to spirit. They have a lot of prophetic dreams, reclamation dreams, healing dreams, and just metabolizing things through their dream state so that they can heal during the day.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I'm hoping. I mean, I had a dream, let's call it a nightmare last night. I woke up with a lot of clarity from it.
Yes.
It was like, oh my God. Oh, do I have to have these right now? I do.
Yes.
I do, right? Like I need them.
I celebrate nightmares.
Oh.
Yep. I have come to really celebrate nightmares because it's spirit's like unique, wise way of helping us metabolize it and heal in our sleep. Like we don't have to do anything. We just have to experience the nightmare to have this clarity. And especially now we're in these like final days of the snake year where we're like at the bottom of the barrel, like excavating a lot of old fears, old traumas, old pain, so lots of people are having like the betrayal wound coming up, the abandonment wound coming up, the inner child wounding coming up, the last of the last things that are coming to clear out. And so when we can experience those things and clear them in our dreams and nightmares, it's golden. And like
it was an abandonment nightmare. It was like, oh my God, I'm here. No one will help me. Yeah. In a new city. It wasn't this city, but it was a new city. I didn't know, yeah, absolutely. I love that framing. Thank you. Yeah. So people will find that their dreams transform. That's what you're saying. What about someone who, like they're having, let's say, unrestful sleep because of all the dreams that are going on? Does that happen? Or it would be a process of like calming that down so that they get restful sleep. They can keep the dreams, but it's restful. That's what I would hope for. But I don't know if that's the reality of it.
I think it's different for each person, but I think if people have that experience, a lot of times it's just they're kicking off a lot of energy and residue very quickly. Some people, especially people who have a long, many years of practice of working on themselves. So this is how it goes, where people will start mushrooms and they're like, they're suddenly like clearing things and healing things. And it's almost miraculous. And they're like, oh my gosh, is this all it took? Like a few weeks of mushrooms? Are you kidding me? But they're forgetting that they have like been working for this for 20, 30 years sometimes. Like they've done the 12-step program. They've done all the meetings. They've done all the programs. They tried this, they tried that. So spirit sees all that we ever do. And so they've kind of been prepping themselves for the mushrooms to just come in and kind of turn the key to their innate healing. So give yourself credit. A lot of times the mushrooms were just waiting for you to meet you at this time that you've already been laying a beautiful foundation to come through. So when people have a really powerful, almost instantaneous, purifying, clearing, cleansing, healing, it's just for a couple of weeks where you're like having a lot of dreams because you're metabolizing a lot, or sometimes people have big emotion come up and like shedding old, like cathartic tears. A lot of people would be like, I'm not sad in my life, but I can't stop crying. I'm just really teary and sentimental. And I have kind of old tears surfacing that I know is like from old stuff. Like I'm weeping for something that happened a very long time ago that has been held in my body. So the more that that's happening, it's just your body and soul are ready to heal. And when you're ready to heal and release, it can happen pretty quickly.
Fascinating. Well, we are out of time. Unfortunately, this has been a really fascinating conversation. So please tell people how to find you and how to find your podcast and how to get connected.
Sure. Easy peasy. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. And yeah, all our things are at microdosingforhealing.com. So the podcast lives there. The training programs and the group programs are there, as well as our global community that you can step into anytime. So it's microdosingforhealing.com.
Wonderful. And that will be in the show notes for everyone. Thank you again, Kayce, for joining me on the podcast.
Oh, thank you. Have a great day.
I hope you truly enjoyed today's episode. I work all over the world doing hypnosis, so if you're interested in working with me, please schedule a free consultation over at my website, drlizhypnosis.com, and we'll see what your goals are and if I can be of service to you in helping you reach them. Finally, if you liked today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast or tell a friend. That way, more and more people learn about the power of hypnosis. This podcast is not mental health treatment, nor should it replace mental health treatment. If you need therapy or hypnotherapy, please seek treatment from a trained professional, such as myself. Have a wonderful week. Peace.